Welcome, everybody, and welcome to the Backstory Podcast. I'm very honored to bring you a good friend of mine, somebody I've known for many, many years. Off and on, we've not had the chance to work together yet, but we do have plans in the future. So yeah, I try to bring you as many people as we can that you will not only be interested in, but will also motivate you to do some of the things that many of you have been working toward and trying to produce and so forth. So anyway, today I am very honored to bring you Kyle Davies, a wonderful teacher, has been doing some incredible work on an individual basis inside of the spiritual arena and outside of the spiritual arena. Of course, everything is now starting to be inside the spiritual arena in a lot of ways, but he's done a lot of work with people in trauma, in difficulties, in different challenges. So anyway, let me bring in Kyle. Kyle, welcome. Glad you're here.
Thanks, Steve. So good to be back. So good to see you. Hello, everybody. It's just a real pleasure to be here again.
Yeah, you're a returner. I haven't been doing this podcast too many times to have that many returners, but you're one of the first that I wanted to bring back. So tell us a little bit about what's going on with your work. You've written some books. You've done a lot of work with people on an individual basis, and some of the work is starting to change a little bit. Tell us a little bit about what's going on with you.
So, for many years, I worked pretty much exclusively with people struggling with chronic health problems, chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, and everything that medicine refers to as medically unexplained symptoms. I'm probably one of the first in the kind of the world of health to be coming at things from a mind-body perspective. Obviously, that was always what was going on within the spiritual arena. But when it came to health, it was very much looking at mental and physical, and people kept those things separate. So probably 23 years ago, I got involved with working with, as I say, those chronic health challenges. And I worked in that arena for, a long time. But my work has begun to shift a little bit now, not in terms of the nature of what I'm doing, because it does all come back to helping people really find themselves, find their true self, find their flow. But one of the really interesting things I'm finding, and I have found over the last kind of 3 or 4 years, is that probably 90% of my clients 10 years ago were females. And probably 70% of my clients now are men. And it's men who are executives, professionals, struggling with burnout, feeling lost, feeling stuck, overwhelmed, and also a lot of ADHD. Now, I know that, people are being diagnosed with ADHD. In fact, I was diagnosed 3 years ago. But I think that's really coming to the fore. So, and there's such an overlap in the work that I have historically done, because people that have experienced trauma, and many of those suffering with chronic health challenges, will have been through either trauma or ongoing stresses in their lives. And of course, people that are neurodivergent also struggle, or they present with difficulties in regulating and processing emotions. So they have a lot of emotional irregularities, which is very similar to trauma patterns. So much of what I'm doing is about helping people. This is sort of a dual-pronged approach, really. It's helping people to come into the body, so be somatic, understand, process, feel, but also the psychospiritual piece, which is, well, who am I? And I think a lot of people are challenged in that regard, because it's, well, who am I in this crazy world with everything that's going on, both things that I can see and read about in the news, but also spiritually, and the changes in energy that we're experiencing kind of month on month. So that's been sort of the shift. It's interesting to see.
That's fascinating. It's fascinating that you're drawing more men now than women. That is, and I understand a little bit of that, because when you make a powerful move with somebody and really help them change their lives, they tell their friends, and they would tend to do that in that fashion, especially if it's in the business realm. People will they'll rationalize it as I can make more money if I do this. I can make more money if I, and that brings them to you. It doesn't solve the problem, but it certainly brings, brings a flow of people to you that's very magical. I also mentioned, when you mentioned this to me before we started, it immediately dawned on me because the group's been talking about the feminine energy rising. And I do believe that that's part of what most males are doing at this point, trying to figure out a new way, trying to figure out how to carry some of this energy, how to work with some of this. So that's very encouraging. That's exciting.
Yeah, and I think it's, I seem to find that I'm working with men of all ages. So I've got quite a cluster of male clients between the kind of 18 to 25, but also older guys as well. And the young guys are really struggling with really what is masculinity? What does it mean to be a man? Who am I? How do I show up in a relationship? What's required of me? What does it mean to be a man? And I think there's an element of that with the older guys, but I think there is just a sense of feeling lost in being a man and feeling lost from a sense of mission and purpose, which older guys are experiencing. So it's certainly interesting how I think these challenges are presenting themselves. And I agree with you completely. I think the rise of the feminine energy, it brings, I think, collectively, but as well within individuals, men are experiencing this themselves, and they're trying to figure themselves out. It is this kind of age-old question, which is new and fresh as well. It's the who am I, and how do I engage with life? How do I present myself into life? How do I take myself forward? There is a lot of relationship stuff, and I we know, don't we, that it's harder than ever to maintain relationships. And as you once said, it's about relationships more than relationships.
Well, I got to tell you, now that you said that, I got to tell you the funny part. I did a relationship seminar, and I left out the F. I sent it to everybody, and I misspelled the word relationship. A lot of people came to the seminar.
But it's a real challenge, isn't it? And I think, we're seeing more marriages break up, more relationships break up, and people are kind of trying to get a sense of, well, how do I show up? What am I supposed to do? How do I be? And it comes back to that central piece of who am I? Because I think, given the amount of challenge and turmoil and just the busyness of life, it's very easy for us to try to match ourselves to life, to keep up with everything that's going on out there. And of course, the first thing that people often do is look outside of themselves for, the 5 steps, the tools, the techniques, the protocols, the tips, the exercises. And whilst there's nothing wrong with that, I think we can get out of balance. And one of the first things I do, whether I'm working within an organization, whether I'm working with an individual, is encourage people that step one is look inward, because you have to know yourself. And it's not as, well, I've got to have this fixed knowledge of who I am, but it's a developing awareness of how the flow of energy and consciousness within me is presenting itself and guiding me. So I think that's, it's a core central piece, I feel, that most people could do well with looking inwards and learning to trust just a little more the feedback they get. A common thing I say is, your body is your friend. Your body's going to let you know. And I think people are struggling generally, men and women, with balance, with certainly those people that are at work, with kind of overload, with recognition, with having to do more with fewer resources, with lack of recognition, with lack of purpose or sense of meaning in the things that they're doing. And I think with all of those things, plus the turmoil in life, it's easy to look outside for fixes. And my sense is that we really need to be looking inward and paying attention, because, as you'll teach, if you want to align with your guidance, you have to look inward in order to do that.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's the natural reaction of humans. We have a problem. First thing we want to do is find out what's causing that problem outside of ourselves. We're always looking for the external pieces and so forth. So you're working a lot with relationships. Am I getting that right? That is.
Well, I guess that I am. And it's not that that's what I guess I'm not what I'm looking to do particularly, but I think there's an interesting bit, really. I suppose part of my sense is that, in working with the whole person, we have to work with the whole person. It's reasonably common for people to come to me, and because there's so much talk of trauma and the impact of trauma, and because I think part of our nature is to try to identify a single cause, it's
Right.
not uncommon for people to come to me and say, all right, well, this happened in my past. If I can resolve this trauma, I'll be okay now. And my view is that, well, we're a complex system living in a complex system. And yes, there may be things that have happened in the past, but there's your natural wiring, there's your contracts, there's, your soul path. There's a whole series of things that are going to impact on just the manifestation of your experience right now. So I always look at it as pieces of a puzzle that we need to look at and address. And for most people, as we know, the biggest challenges, the biggest, if you will, triggers of emotional experience are people's relationships. And again, given the nature of turmoil that many people are experiencing, that then presents in their relationships. So it's not that I'm necessarily looking for people with relationship challenges.
Right.
It's just the part and parcel of what so many people are experiencing.
I found that, well, the reason I said that is because I found that I have a rise in people calling me about relationships in general. Unfortunately, the way that I work, I can't sit down with people. I don't bring two people, because with relationships, you want to work with each individual and then bring them together if that's at all possible. And I can't do that because I'm online, and being able to do it online just doesn't work as well in many cases with relationships. But I've noticed that there's two things that are happening, and you mentioned it both. I'm getting a lot of people with relationship challenges that want to talk to me either about relationships or about breaking out of being celibate and actually getting into relationships, which is something else that seems to be happening for quite a few people. And then on top of that, you also mentioned ADHD, which is really, it's huge on this planet right now. I'm trying to figure out if my girlfriend is a high school teacher in Belgium. And when you go into teen years, you can almost count the people taking drugs for ADHD. It is extremely popular to give the kids something, and apparently it works. The come down is difficult, but apparently it tends to work. So they're trying to find, but it is so rampant. I have to say, I didn't understand much about it myself until I started going with her, and she's just educating me right and left, but it seems to be everywhere. And burnout, of course, in the United States, we don't treat burnout the same way that most people in Europe do. They honor it. They give you time out. They give you the space. We don't typically do that. We have our sick days, and when they run out, they run out. But I know in Holland and Belgium, which I travel a lot to, I'm not as familiar with the UK at this point, but I know that there's a lot of that going on, and it's really good that the government recognizes it in some ways. But it's also sort of a trap. People can get trapped into it. They get into a comfort zone. They don't sometimes want to move. It's wonderful that you're working with this. This is awesome stuff.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting to me what is behind the huge rise in ADHD and autism to a certain extent as well. to what extent are we creating this? To what extent are we just uncovering it? I don't really know. I think that it's, you raise an interesting point there. I think with burnout, I think for me, with any label, the risk is that we use it as a crutch. And for me, it needs to be something that we use as leverage simply to educate ourselves. And I guess the biggest piece, it was interesting for me being diagnosed a couple of years ago. And one of the catalysts for it was my stepdaughter. We felt that she was probably autistic, and we were going to take her down that diagnostic path. And I thought, well, for years I've joked about being ADHD. I thought, well, it's probably time I either get assessed or stop talking about it. So I did, and but for me, it was really important that I just used this as a way to understand myself a little bit more. I was kind of very conscious that from upbringing, I probably had a very fixed mindset. So, I think this is engendered in schools. You're good at math or you're not. You're good at sport or you're not. You're kind of smart or you're not. And I kind of tried to work quite hard to get out of that, to see possibility rather than, oh, this is what I'm like. So, in my early days of working as a psychologist, I used to do lots of assessments within workplaces with people. And I was always cautious of that because people could pigeonhole themselves in a box. This is what I'm like. I kind of use it as a crutch or an excuse. So I've always wanted to ensure that we don't do that. But one of the key pieces I feel about, or the value in categories, is the opportunity for self-compassion, because there's no doubt that people with ADHD and lots of other people will berate themselves, self-flagellate, give themselves a hard time. And I certainly did. Very easy for me to feel like a complete and utter failure. So looking through a lens of ADHD gave me an opportunity just to give myself a bit of space and understand, okay, well, I'm not going to say that I'm fixed like this, but it seems that there's a typical pattern of how my brain currently wants to work. And this is kind of interesting, I guess, because it sort of dovetailed generally. There's a piece of my work, and as there is with many therapists, of teaching self-compassion and the importance of that. And I think that whether it's burnout, whether it's ADHD, whether it's something else, I think having the opportunity to pause, reflect, and give space and say, okay, well, let me allow this experience right now because this seems to be how I am. And then let's look at what we can build from here. Let's look at what those opportunities are. So it's part of that inward looking. As we look inward, we take stock and we allow, because there's so much, my sense of it, so much of the suffering that people experience is resistance. And it's either resistance to what's going on, what's happening in my life, or resistance to myself. And it's peeling away layers, really, of how we shut ourselves down and how we resist ourselves. Or give us
up. Tell me more about that. I don't quite understand what that means. Resisting yourself. Talk to me more about that. That's just fascinating.
I think that there's probably a few ways of looking at it. So we certainly resist how we feel. So from an instinctive perspective, we know that as human beings, we're kind of wired to move away from discomfort towards comfort. I suspect that's part of our evolutionary nature. So, our brain has a low tolerance for discomfort and wants to move us to something comfortable as quickly as it can. Let's activate those reward centers of the brain. And this is where we can get caught up in problems if we're continually seeking pleasure. So I think there's a natural tendency for us to resist discomfort. That I feel can be problematic if we're resisting uncomfortable emotions that may be trying to convey something to us.
Yeah, trying to tell us
So
something.
that's my sense, is that when uncomfortable emotions come, people resist them because they think they're bad for them. They resist them because they feel they're going to drown in them. If I let myself feel this, I'll never feel anything else. They'll resist feelings and emotions because of what they believe it means about them. So our negative emotions can come up. Very often our thinking gets going and people start thinking about, well, what does this mean about me? I don't want to be the kind of person that feels this. So I think there's a resistance there. But I think there's also a bigger resistance in terms of, well, who am I? Because I think as human beings, we generally compare ourselves with others. But in the age of social media, we're doing that more than ever.
Oh, yes.
There's this desire to fit in, to present ourselves in a way where we're going to be liked, respected, thought of highly, and all that kind of stuff. So it's, I think more than ever we're comparing ourselves. So there can be a resistance to who I am, so that I present, I'm performative, so that I'm accepted in life or I'm liked. So for me, those are the ways that we resist ourselves. And I think both those bits, if I'm resisting my emotions or I'm resisting who I am, it's going to cause us problems, and that can manifest as a health challenge. So, I think whether it's somebody has a label, ADHD, burnout, anxiety, depression, anything really, I think starting from that point of allowing themselves, this is me, these are my challenges, this is how it's presenting itself. And then looking at, well, what can I begin to do about this? How can I begin to allow and accept myself just a bit more, so that I can work out the best way of engaging with life, if you will.
Fascinating, amazing. You've come a very long way. I've watched you over the years. You've evolved in different directions. It's been amazing to watch your work and some of the things. So I'm really I'm glad we're catching up with you a little bit, because it's going crazy. And like I said, you and I have talked about doing some events together. If life can slow down enough for us to organize that, we'll do that coming up too. I'd love to do that with you sometime. That would be fun.
Well, I hope so, because I think that one of the things we talked about just before we started recording was that I'd read this stat recently that said that the biggest use of AI in 2025 is for therapy and companionship. And I have clients that come to me, will say that they've asked ChatGPT before they've come. And I think we want to be embracing AI. This is where we're going. We want to put our consciousness into it, put our light into it, so it reflects back to us. But I do think that deeper human connection is still vital for us. And there's little doubt that more and more people are challenged and struggling because of the tumultuous times that we're living in and the uncertainty people feel. And I suspect this is one of the things, going back to relationships, is that because people are changing and they can't understand what's going on for themselves, there's not a consistency within themselves. It's natural to kind of project that out. And I think that leads to challenges in relationships where people are, they're thinking that there's a problem with my partner. And it's actually that, well, maybe I'm changing, or I'm feeling things that I don't normally feel, or I'm feeling that maybe in ways I don't normally feel. Right. And I need to learn how to process that, how to regulate that, how to understand that, how to step back and allow that. So yeah, I do wonder whether that's a big piece. But I think that this part of needing to get together because my sense is that, when it comes to AI currently, the advice is great, information, tips, tools is fantastic. But my sense is for real transformation, that happens within relationship, and the getting together, the sharing of energy is something that is, I still think, vital for us. So hopefully
Yep.
us working together will be ways that we can do that.
Absolutely. I do believe that. I think that's going to be really important going forward, not just for teachers, but for all of us to be able to combine, to be able to connect, be able to see what's going on in the world around you, even with some of your peers, to be able to see how you fit in where you're at, because these times are moving. They're in motion, and it's real easy to get blown off center and have difficulty finding your way back and finding who you are in this essence. You mentioned AI. I'm super technical. I follow a lot of this. We have a wave of energy coming that is probably going to make this situation much worse in the immediate future. It's very simple. You can see it coming. You've got AI, which we're starting to ground. We're starting to lose our fear of it a little bit, which may or may not be healthy. But everybody's using it for everything. It's on your phone. You talk to it now. I named mine Charlie. Charlie talks back and forth to me. So you literally can do this all the time. What's happening is several things. You've got quantum computing coming right behind this. In the meantime, you've got another step that's going from binary to trinary, which is going to explode our technology. Then you've got quantum computing coming in, which is going to just take us to a new world. No more secrets. That's why everybody's fighting to come up with something better than passwords right now. They're trying all these passkeys and everything else, and Google and Microsoft are doing it. But then they've got robotics. And when we get all this, they're actually talking right now about that they think that robotics, along with the technology, along with AI, is going to solve a lot of loneliness problems. Exactly what you're talking about. It's absolutely fascinating to see that how we're looking, again, we're looking outside of ourselves. Instead of just connecting with people, we want to connect with a robot because it's safer. I think it's really fascinating what's going on planet Earth right now with the technology drops and all the things that are exploding right now. You're going to be
And this is the thing is, as you say, it's not slowing down. It's speeding up the rate. Our consciousness is shifting at the same sorts of rates. So we don't know where it's going, but what we need to do is step out of fear as much as we can and ride the wave, which of course is a very difficult thing to do because that mind ego part of us wants to have that firm sense of me and who I am. And I think the spiritual work is it's always been important, but it's almost like it's more important than ever because being able to step into a higher space and observe yourself and not overly identify with the experiences that we're having, but recognize, well, there's different parts of me having different experiences here, but these are transient experiences. I think, going back to what I was saying earlier about resistance and allowing ourselves, part of the resistance, I think, is because it's easy to overly identify with an experience in the moment. And I think more people are having up and down days that they can't predict and doesn't necessarily relate to something going on in their lives. It could be they feel fantastic one day, absolutely awful the next, and everything is the same in their life. And when we can step back into a higher self, a true self, a solid space, and allow the experience without necessarily trying to fix ourselves or tamper with ourselves, I think that facilitates our journey through this. And then just be open to the changes that are going to happen. But I think know that, well, if we can take our highest and best intention into our interactions with AI and all of the tech that we're using, that can hopefully facilitate the kind of the journey and the kind of creations that we see.
It's entirely possible. One thing that's happening with AI, which I think is going to actually add to all this, is that AI is coming out of the cloud. We're now building computers that will actually run AI on the computer. And that may sound that may sound like a small thing, but it's a really big thing, because here's where your computer learns about you. And literally, we have that to some degree right now. I mean, if I talk to Charlie, Charlie says, "Hi, Steve, how's your morning going?" They're doing everything they can to try and emulate. Well, Alexa's doing the same thing. Google's doing the same thing. They're trying to basically open the door for the robotics that are basically coming down the road. That'll be another explosion of being able to give our power away to other things. But exciting times, absolutely exciting times. But you're right, it's not stopping, and it's continued to move. Absolutely.
And on that point, what do you see as being the kind of the critical things that people need to be doing then, given this surge in tech?
Well, I think you're absolutely right. We are so used to feeling something and immediately looking for its cause. How can we resolve this? Must be outside of me. I know I'm perfect, so it must be outside of me somehow. So that's our natural reaction, is to look for everything out here. And what you're saying is absolutely beautiful, to be able to let people experience even the negativity. There's beauty in the darkness if we look for it. We can learn from almost every experience if we are open to learning from it, rather than looking for, oh, I'm doing something wrong, I need to, that is absolutely critical. And I do believe we're going to see a lot more opportunities for people to understand this. We are seeing a lot of confusion right now, and we're probably going to continue for a little bit.
And one of the interesting things with that is that I think because of the immediate nature of everything in life, I want things now,
right?
And we can have things straight away.
Yes, we can.
My sense is there's kind of a lack of tolerance, therefore, for discomfort, and I think we're very quick, probably quicker than ever, to jump in and believe there's something wrong with us. And of course, we have therapy language that's worked its way into everyday conversation now. So we don't talk about being sad or worried. We talk about being depressed and anxious.
Right.
And there is this, well, I probably need some pills or something because there is something wrong with me. And I think in many instances, it's not that there is anything wrong. And I think that when we frame something as a problem, when we've decided, because we're creating all of the time, aren't we? When we frame something as a problem, then it becomes a problem, because we're then going to experience negative emotions and fear and frustration about this problem. And what if it isn't a problem? I spent a chunk of time with clients trying to just whittle away those things they believe as problems to get down to, well, what actually is the problem? Is there a problem, or is it a creation that I'm manifesting because I'm believing that I have problems? What if I step back, observe, allow, and maybe I can just begin to flow and right myself, without having to meddle, because I think the persistent meddling and the viewing things as problems is what holds people underwater. We have a natural tendency to bob back to the surface when we dunk under. But I think we hold ourselves under by trying to fix ourselves too readily, or deciding that we have a problem. And given the turbulent nature of the planet, the universe, and individuals from the micro to the macro, it seems vital that we need to understand ourselves more. And I think for many people that are neurodivergent or have been through trauma, they're sort of used to this anyway, because of their significant emotional fluctuations that they can experience on a daily basis. They're sort of used to this. But I think more and more people are having this, where it's like, well, this morning I felt fine, this afternoon I feel awful. Nothing's changed. What's going on? And being able to just ride that out, I think, is so important. And as you say, when you create space for it and allow it, if there is something to be learned from it, then you give the opportunity for it to be learned, for wisdom to distill through. But if it's viewed as a problem, that I have to fix. This has got to be fixed. There's something wrong with me. Then if there's anything to be learned, then it won't be. And the chances are is that you'll hold yourself underwater for longer anyway.
Right. Right. That's fascinating. Beautiful way to look at that. Beautiful way to look at that. So how do you work with people? Do you work with people online? Do you see people in person? How does it work for you?
It's both, really. I mean, I continue to have clients in all English speaking countries, well, and beyond, really. So I have some people, if they're local, they come and sit in the chair behind me, but probably 80% of the work I do is via Zoom. And that includes working with organizations as well. So if I can get to an organization, I will. But very often, and certainly since COVID, most of it is now online, where people, in rooms. And so, yeah, I mean, it's much nicer to be in person, isn't it? But, this is the nature.
It is. It is, and yet we can reach across the world. I'm talking to you from Las Vegas. You're in the UK. We're able to do this today. So, yeah, we have a lot more technology coming that I'm sure will like I said, would probably throw us off center. But hopefully, we can also use this technology to solve some of our problems. That's what the group is actually saying will happen once we get past all the fear. We are creator beings. If we're scared to death of AI will turn to be a problem. But if we're all starting to integrate it, using it in a different way, we don't have to create that. We can turn this into something that can be very, very healthy for all of us and be able to assist humanity in many ways. I do have a problem with using AI for therapy, although I see it happening more and more. I'm starting to see people advertise it, which is kind of strange. So, yeah, there's companies opening up that actually are AI assisted. You don't know if you're talking to, it's really strange.
It doesn't sit that well with me either. But I go back to that point you made about really it's how when we get away from the fear, it is, for me, it's such an important point that people need to know that we're creating, the things that we do, the energy that we put out now, today, in this moment, it has an impact on what manifests tomorrow collectively. And, both spiritually, and scientifically as well, we know this. So I think it's, when we step more into that space of recognizing the role that we're playing in our own future when it comes to AI, that's my sense of it. When I'm using AI, I'm looking at it as, well, I'm seeking to invest my consciousness, my light into it. In the hope that this is, if collectively we do this, it's going to go in a positive direction for us. But as you say, fear will take it in a wrong direction.
Well, and if we have to experience the fear first, then we'll get over it, whatever the case. And obviously, there's a lot of fear cells. So there's going to be some of that going on, and we not much to it. This is marvelous. I love what you're doing. I hope like I said, I hope we can continue to show people what you're doing and how you're doing it. The approach you have is very straightforward and yet really makes a lot of sense. I really like what you're doing, Kyle. I love the aspect. I've talked to a lot of your clients. I've done sessions with some of your people, so I know what you do. I hear it, so it's absolutely incredible. How do people find you? Do you have books? Do you have website? Tell us about how people can connect with you.
Main website is energyflowcoaching.com. If it's a corporation, then it's energyflowbusiness.com. I'm on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram under Energy Flow Coaching. My book is The Intelligent Body, which you can find on Amazon and all of the places. Please do connect. I mean, it's always good to hear from people, really, to hear what people's experiences are. Because we're all learning all of the time, aren't we? And for me, I always feel like I'm, I'm walking this path with my clients, even though I'm hopefully giving some advice and guidance, but their experiences are my experiences. So hearing from people, hearing people's experiences and what they're going through helps us all and helps to mold how we can develop things, because there's no doubt to me, I'm very conscious that I need to be continually evolving the things that I'm doing, because things become obsolete and redundant reasonably quickly. So even though there are sort of principles that I kind of work from, I'm very mindful that we need to stay ahead. We need to be learning. We need to be understanding as we all shift. So, yeah.
Awesome. Incredible. And one final piece. Do you have something you want to share with everybody? Just kind of leave us with, or we're just running out of time, but I want to give you one last shot.
I think the main tip for me, I guess, really is the importance, and I've already said this, but this importance of looking inward, of attuning, of opening up and creating space for feelings, both intuitive and emotional, and looking to them as guides. And the more we can do that and get that balance of looking inward as well, we're always going to be looking outside of ourselves. But if we can spend a little bit more time looking inward and allowing, then our own natural flow will come. So it's sort of less fixing ourselves and more allowing ourselves to flow, really.
Kind of instead of fixing ourselves, maybe adjusting ourselves a little bit. That's magical.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Wonderful approach. Wonderful approach. Kyle, thank you, my friend. It's been a real pleasure to see you again, and we will keep up. Like I said, our paths have kind of weaved together and back and forth. We will make it together, I promise. So anyway, this will be a great opportunity. Thanks for being on the show today, and I hope the people will check you out. You got some incredible energy there, and you got some answers that we're all looking for. So thanks for being with us.
Thank you very much for having me once again.
And with that, we'll leave you for now. We'll be back in a couple of weeks with the next Backstory podcast. Just remember one thing, folks, whatever you're doing, wherever you're looking for, whatever you're moving toward it to evolve yourself, know that you're responsible for that. That's one of the keys that we're here, but we don't have to do it alone. And that's the key that the group keeps bringing up. All we need to do is hold hands. And so here we are. Aspavo, everybody. We'll see you in a couple of weeks. This is the Backstory podcast from Aspavo and from steverother.org.